Sabrina said, I started my company in college with college roommates. So I went to Cornell University, and I met my college roommates. And long story short, and I want to be mindful of time because I actually have a whole progression from college till now. So it's going to take a few hours. Okay. So we started this company in college. Actually, the three of us became deep committed Christians while we were in college. And so as we were looking at graduating, one of the things that we decided to do is we said, hey, let's start a company purely based on good morals and principles. You know, back in the 80s, that was just unheard of, okay? I know people talk about that now, but back in the 80s, that was unheard of. So we said, let's start a company purely based on good morals and principles. And so this was the three of us in our parents' basement, all right? So can you tell which one is me? I hope so. I'm the Asian with glasses. So we're in the parents' basement, and we're the typical startup. We are literally bootstrapping. Everything's on credit cards, where our bills are 30 days late, and we all take their bills, so we'll make sure the lights don't get shut off. Our moms are cooking for us, that's our cafeteria flat. And so we're working like this, and then one day, Walmart calls us. They are back then in the 90s, they're the largest retailer in the world. Today, they're one of the most valuable companies in the world. So Walmart calls us and says, hey, we saw your box product. So we had a box product called Full Armor that protected computers and endpoints. And they said, we saw your box product and we really like it. Can you make a version of your product to protect every computer in every store in Walmart? Now, I don't think they knew we were three guys in the basement. And so, of course, we're like, oh, yes. And I remember my partners and I, we were like, this is it, we made it the big times, right? I remember Walmart sent us kind of a prepayment check. It was the largest check we ever saw. We literally paid off our credit cards, paid our bills, and we were in cloud nine. And back then, I was the only engineer, so I'm coding away for 2 weeks straight, right, to get this version. Now, back then, the way Walmart did software distribution is we would send them the master copy, and they would upload it via satellite, and it would go down to every computer in every store in Walmart. Now, I'm going to go back one slide to show you. You see that computer? It's the only computer we could afford. So that's the computer I coded on. That's the computer I tested on. That's the computer I did the release engineering on. And that's the software, that's the computer that I then distribute the software with. Now, obviously, if you guys, any of you are coders, technologists, come on, yes, probably all of you, to some degree. So in software engineering, that's a big no-no. You should never do that. You should test more. So because that's the only computer we had, I tested the version. I finished it in 2 weeks, tested the version, works on my computer, so I sent it to Walmart. Walmart uploaded your satellite, came down to every store, every computer in Walmart. The next morning, we got a call from the head of legal department at Walmart. Okay, you guys, when I tell this story to students, they're like, why would a head of legal call? But you guys know that there's something wrong when the head of legal at Walmart calls. So he calls us and he's very calm about this, right? He said, we got your software, we distributed it, and apparently it has a bug in it. Because it's a security product, once it downloads, installs, and it's supposed to take over the computer. Well, he said essentially downloaded, installed, and crashed. It crashed every computer in every Walmart store in the country. So now if I went out with that, I'll probably still, as a hacker, be considered a successful hacker if that was my goal. But essentially, the next thing he said was shocking because he said, we stopped payment on the check, which the check that we already deposited and spent the money on. And then he said, we are taking steps to litigate. They're gonna sue. Now, in corporate America, the first assumption is the worst case assumption, right? So they were taking the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is either we're negligent, which is a problem, and then we'll run away with the money, or we're hackers that we did this on purpose. Either of those options was something that is not acceptable. So when they said this, now my partners and I, as I told you in the beginning, we started this company with the goal to run it with the morals and principles that we believed in, right? This is what Ted talked about. What is your belief? What is your values? And how do you stick to it? Now, belief and values mean nothing if you run away and then falter at the first sign of difficulty, right? So when this can happen, the three of us didn't have to discuss this. Because we knew if this is the last thing we do, then we're gonna go down with our principles intact. So immediately our response was, you know what? That's not who we are. We're men of honor. We own up to our mistakes. We said, we'll return your money, so we have to raise the money to return it. We'll fix the problem for free. And we told them, we'll pay for the damages. Now, naively, we didn't know what the damages were. We found out later on, this is already been 4 hours. Every hour, Walmart was down. They're losing millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. So we were committing to potentially paying them back $50 million or more dollars. The guy on the other line was not expecting this answer. Yeah. If you want to differentiate yourself in the industry today, find your value and your core belief system and stick to it. Stick to that principle. And that will make you unique, because this world is so lacking morals and principles and values, right? So the guy on the other line was not expecting the answer. He literally, I think he was shocked. He paused on the phone. I think he paused for 10, 15 seconds. It felt like 10, 15 minutes to us, because we're like sitting out there like, are you still there? Anyways, he finally says, you know what? If you can fix this problem in the next 24 hours, he said, you keep the money. All right, now, I'm the tech guy, my other two guys are the business guys. They hear this and like, yes, 24 hours. Like, okay, there's an axiom in computer science that says, if you can't recreate the problem, you can't fix it. I couldn't recreate the problem. So it didn't matter if they gave me 24 days, I won't be able to fix it. So for the next 22 hours, I am looking at source code to try to randomly find a bug I can't recreate. So let me just give you the statistics of finding that. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack the size of a football field. Okay? With 100,000 lines of code, and I'm trying to randomly find a bug that I can't recreate. Anyways, so 22 hours later, I'm hunched over my computer, completely exhausted, and my partners come over and they put their hand on my shoulder and they're like, Danny, it's time. I'm thinking, it's time to throw in the towel, probably work for Walmart for free for the rest of our lives. And to their credit, they said, Danny, it's time to pray. Now, I will tell you honestly, at that moment, I'm like, yeah, let's pray, get that over with. And then we'll throw the towel and look for Walmart for free for the rest of our lives. So I will preface this, what happened next has never happened to me before, has never happened to me since. It's been this one time in my life, okay? I usually have a slide, I skipped it over. I closed my eyes and I saw a vision. I believe we get visions, right? I believe personally that we get visions and we're directed. And the visions are things that we understand the most. So the vision I saw was source code. I can't describe, source code was flashing through my eyes. Because I usually have that source code in a slide, I forgot to put it in. So I'm gonna write the code. It actually stopped at one line of code. And I knew exactly where that line of code was. Now for C++ programming, and I'm sure there's no C++ programmers here, but I will give you a quick primer on C++ programming. There's a concept called pointers, right? If you have a x pointer equals, and if you have an asterisk in front of the variable, right? It means it's a pointer to memory. Okay? If you have an ampersand, I don't know if I wrote that correctly, in front of that same variable, it means it's a pointer to a pointer in memory. It's a double pointer. I had an asterisk where there should have been an ampersand. I mistyped one character. Okay? And that piece of code only ran on the version of the operating system that Walmart had. It would skip over online. So I would have never seen that bug. So I changed that one character, recompiled the code, sent it to Walmart. They uploaded via satellite, came down and overwrote my old code, rebooted, and every computer came back alive. Wow. Today, this is a small list of our customers. Almost every Fortune 500 company and more has been a customer of ours. Not because we're smarter, obviously we're not that much smarter, because we make a lot of mistakes, but because and by the way, that was 38 years ago. I still run the company today with the same two partners. So if you want to start something that's gonna last, focus on what is your belief, what is your value, what is your core principle, and stick to it, because that consistency is what people are drawn to. Right? These companies, like Walmart, by the way, they were so enamored with what we're doing, they literally called all their vendors. At that time, they would call HP and IBM and Compaq, like, you have to use full armor stuff, or we're taking your machines off of our stores. This is how much they believed in us. And then, of course, that story would just continue on and on, right? To the point where almost the White House, CIA, FBI, the Department of Defense, they're all customers of ours because they trust us. Because they know these guys, when they say something, they're gonna follow through with a sense of honesty. All right, that was a beginning introduction. I only have 3 minutes left, so I'm gonna go quick. And I'll just talk faster. By the way, this is the 3 of us today. Actually, that was 10 years ago. So we're less hair, more gray. We're still together because we are aligned on purpose in what we're trying to accomplish. Now, for those people who are in their second part of their lives, we had a second calling. I personally had a second calling, and that was actually when I volunteered as a parent volunteer at Valley Christian Schools right here in San Jose. Our kids were under school. They had a space program where they're launching experiments to space. So, kids would work on a science experiment, and then when they launch it, we would put it on a rocket and actually install it into the International Space Station. The cost of launching just one experiment was $108,000, which is out of reach for everybody, right? But what I saw is when kids were working on this program, the top 1% of the 1%, they were engaged in education to an extent I'd never seen. So obviously, as an entrepreneur, my first thought is, wow, we need to scale this. We need to democratize it so every student can have access to space experiments. So I remember going out to the president of the school and saying, Dr. Doherty, would you allow me as a parent volunteer to redo this program to expand this to all students? And of course, he's like, Danny, we've been trying for years. No one was able to figure it out, and So I actually put a design together where we would fly up a permanent experiment unit, install it permanently on the ISS, and we'll get kits and modules for students to recreate the experiments, and we'll upload their experiment via internet connection. Now, I didn't know if any of this is possible, but as an entrepreneur, you just throw crazy ideas. And then I wrote up the proposal and presented it to NASA, because you have to get NASA approval to fly anything out there. You know what NASA said? Impossible. Can't be done. Now, as an entrepreneur, when someone tells you something's impossible, that's the first thing I gravitate towards, because that means no one's done it. It hasn't been done. And so I triple down on it. And I was like, you know what? That's something we want to do. So I called every engineer friend I could get to work on this problem. It took us 4 years. Every year NASA would tell me, impossible, can't be done, don't even do it, right? So, and Microsoft was one of our engineers that volunteered at the time. Long story short again, 4 years later we launched this module. We installed the module, and on the first connection, it was working. We got a video back of a live connection to the ISS. The first thing that happened a week later, after NASA found out and the word got out, the chief scientist of NASA came to Valley Christian Schools to actually see it, if we actually got it done. I remember in that discussion, as I showed him the actual unit working, he said, Danny, I asked my NASA engineers 2 years ago if this was possible, and they told me this was impossible. And then the next question he asked me, which is really weird, it's like, he said, do you believe in God? Because he believed this was in the realm of impossibility, right? So anyways, so that's only a third of the story. So let's go on. As soon as this happened, all of my peers in the industry, because they brought our Valley Christian kids on stage at Microsoft's biggest conference. This is a keynote, and in front of 20,000 people, they demonstrated how our students from Valley Christian School was able to design this one of a kind, and still there is no system in the world that does this. So we took something that cost $180,000 supply. We can now do 8 million experiments a year at $1 an envelope. So we now go around the country or around the world giving this type of inspirational access to schools all over the world. So my peers came back after this conference and they said, Danny, you guys come for space. You should come for the oceans. I'm like, what does that mean? And so they're like, you should enter into an X Prize competition. And that year they had a competition. X Prize is a 30-year-old nonprofit that awards tens of millions of dollars for the world's greatest unsolved problems. And they make this competition so that people would compete and try to get to the prize. So naively, at that year there was a $7 million Ocean Discovery X Prize to map the ocean floors. So naively, I said, oh yeah, sure, we'll enter a team because it's a good learning experience. So because of a 3-year experiment or competition, I had to enter 13-year-olds, 13 to 15-year-olds. So because otherwise they graduate, that kind of finish, right? So this was a portion of our first team. And when we entered, I found out that we were the only high school team to enter. But also that no high school team has ever gone past the first round, or to a semifinal round, or to a final round, or more. So I remember thinking, okay, will this be a learning experience in failure? Because failure is a good way to learn. And it's this thing, Marie Ange was talking about grit. We were teaching kids grit, right? How to stick with something and really keep motivated to try. So I thought, okay, it'll be a good learning lesson. Anyways, long story short again, we had no budget, no equipment. The kids would call every engineering company they could think of, and then people started donating the equipment. Until when a year and a half later, we became the first high school team in history to make it to a semifinal round. On the second year, we became the first high school team to make it to a final round. On the third year, the award ceremony was in Monaco. They rented out the Oceanic Museum in Monaco. 400 people in attendance, heads of state, leading scientists around the world. And they told me, if you announce the winner, you have 1 minute to come up and speak. Right? And then so we were announced the winner. Only high school team still to date to ever win an X Prize competition. When I came up to accept the award, the first thing I said is, I want to thank God for his miracle. Because this truly was a miracle stop. I will tell you, for this audience, so there's a documentary that we started doing and finished. The president of the school actually had the foresight. We thought we were going to document the failure of our students, and actually documented our win. And so over a 2-year period, we actually shot and compiled a documentary. So if you want to watch it, you can go to teamoceanquest.com. And we've released it in film festivals. We're official selection of 15 film festivals and won like 4 of them. And I'm not even a filmmaker. We just had to throw the documentary up there, and it was so well done. So what it does is it chronicles the accomplishment when you can inspire kids to have the grit. Every portion of that 3 years, we were infusing into our students the concept of value or principle, of hard work, and a prayer. And so when that award ceremony happened, the CEO of X Prize is a woman named Anusha Ansari. She came up to me and she said, Danny, how are you ever gonna top this? Right? And I remember telling her, I wanna do more X Prizes because I've seen the effect it has on the kids. Imagine the transformative effect your skill set as an older person who is either working in industry or retired, that you could have an impact like this on students, right? And I was addicted by that time, right? So I said, I want to do more X Prizes. That was 8 years ago, by the way. We have done 7 more X Prizes since. Wow. We have semifinal 4 times. We're in the running in 3. So what we've proven is that high school kids can do this from anywhere. Now, my wife and I always make a big change only if we feel called. And just earlier this year, we felt called to move to Malaysia. I know we have no connections to Malaysia in any way possible, but I visited and I've done education classes there. I just felt called, and we had this both of us feeling a sense of calling. And so earlier this year, I decided, hey, let's enter an X Prize team out of Malaysia. Why not, right? Now the crazy thing is it's a $101 million X Prize called X Prize HESFAM to reverse the human aging by 20 years. So it's the most difficult X Prize I've ever seen them try. And then because we started late, we had 10 days to put the proposal together, whereas every other team had over a year. And our competitors were billion-dollar biotech firms that already had pharmaceuticals and solutions in market. So I was like, hey, we're gonna start this team. We'll never get past this round, but it'll be a good experience, right? So I went to KL, Kuala Lumpur, convinced 3 schools to give me a bunch of their students. Convinced, I know it's weird, right? Convinced university professors from University of Malaya, University of Nanyang to come together and create an Asian solution using tiger with mushroom that only grows in Malaysia. And we put all this together in 10 days. And I told the team, hey, we have less than 1% chance of making it past this round. It was so difficult that out of 650 submissions, they were going to narrow it down to 40, and then they were going to award $250,000 to each of the 40 teams. We found out in April that we are in the 40s. So what we've been able to show and prove, it's not just US teams, it's not just teams from Laude Christian schools, but it's a team from any high school with the right mentoring, support, and coaching. Students can do anything. So we've now broken the glass. This is the first team out of Asia to ever make it to a semifinal round, first high school team. We've now broken that glass ceiling. Imagine what we can do if you can take your talents and skills and apply it to education, apply it to our next generation, because that's where we need it the most. I would have never, so this 11 years that I quote unquote volunteered and worked in education, I remember when I made that decision as a parent volunteer and then switching to a full-time at Laude Christian, I had to tell my business partners, my 2 partners, hey, I'm gonna take a sabbatical. I feel called to the second calling. And they thought I was crazy. But when I told them that I feel called to do this, they said, Danny, if you're called, you need to do it. And they thought it was gonna be a year or 2. 11 years later, I can tell you it's the most impactful 11 years of my life. I can never even imagine going back on that. So I challenge you today, for those who are being mentored and those who are considering to be mentors and those who are mentors, there's nothing better than this type of environment where you're getting coached and mentored to help both the next generation excel and succeed, and also to have your skills and talents be impactful to the next generation. So thank you.